29 years ago, I was homeless, helpless, hopeless. I didn't think I had anything to offer the world. My faith wouldn't allow me to suicide, but I was trying to do that by my addiction. And, you know, here I am 30 years later, helping a lot of people. I'm sorry. And with tears in her eyes, she gave me a big hug. She came in and told her story, and the guy that saved her life was there. So that was powerful.
Hello, welcome to AB Lifetime channel on Action Explorations. I'm Anna Bobikova, and our topic today is Crisis Intervention, Part 3. And my guest today is D.Moran. Hello, David.
Hello, Anya. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
New online educational project alert. If you learn psychodrama and you like to learn it online with pre-recorded videos format, please check actionexplorations.education in December 2020. At that moment, there will be the first programs. Please see the detailed information in the announcement at the end of this video.
So when you told that you have the part, like couple of hours there in the training for police officers of self-care, and then it popped up in my mind, well, it's interesting because they do interventions. Police officers do intervention. It's their regular routine work. But I understand many of these people of police officers, they are veterans. They are coming from not that great, like, family of origins, many of them. And I understand when they do interventions, they can trigger them. And with their, like, I'm sure, like, I don't think that too many police officers are going to therapist, like, for 10 years to manage their own crisis. So, and it's, you mentioned about this couple of hours of self-care. So could you please just like maybe briefly tell something more about that, about self-care and people who are in the like crisis?
First responders. Yeah, so I put that out there. I tried to dictate it on the first session, you know, the first training that we did. And like from my mental health perspective, this is what self-care looked like. And it died, right? It was flat, no response. So first, they're guarded. They insulate each other and they talk amongst each other. But I will tell you this. In 2008, there was a different mindset in the officers than it is now. And even in 2000, maybe 12, I started seeing a change. So a couple things. You got younger people who understand addiction. You got more addiction showing up in the family. And then with the opiate crisis and the meth throughout the country, you can't ignore it anymore, you know?
Yes.
So the self-care, I started putting it on them. What do they do? And in the beginning, 2008, 2009, it was a lot of, you know, bar, party type social atmosphere. Yeah. You don't hear too much of that. It comes up, but more, you know, working out, family interaction. A lot of them talk about what they do with their kids, spending time with their kids. And I always encourage people to have a go-to. Whether it's a police officer or a social worker or a counselor or a manager, who on your job can you go to and tell anything? Because sometimes you don't want to go to your supervisor. So self-care for people has to start with the individual. And we're getting closer to, and I can't speak for, you know, other communities, but we are getting closer to officers being able to open up and looking for some help. And, you know, that's usually coming like through the EAP or through a program developed by the community of officers and their unions. They all have them. They're a little less likely to use them just because they're the type people that they're raised and bred to keep tight to their chest, their problems and their pain. And, you know, you really don't want an officer showing up on the scene crying and emotionally upset, right? So they do. They keep their emotions, you know, tight.
Well, and I just can't, I'm trying to imagine your training, and I'm sure, you know, like, when they even create the scenes sociodramatically, the scenes, like, for instance, the intervention is when they come into the house and there is like drunk mother with a little child. It triggers many, I'm sure that it triggers many of them, because many of them had exactly the same experiences, and how important, and it's absolutely amazing that you incorporated this in your training.
There was one scene where we had played something out, and so the scene was breaking out, and the people that played the roles were de-rolling and like walking off the front of the like stage, if you will. And I started talking to the audience about process. What did you experience? What did you see? And one, I still get choked up about this. One of the officers, a female officer, like as she was passing me, she goes, "I'm sorry." And with tears in her eyes, she gave me a big hug. And as I'm communicating this, that's what happened when I was in front of 35 people, right? So I get choked.
Emotional, yeah.
I felt it, and what happened for a couple of reasons is, you know, it dawned on me at that time that we were touching them, because like the communication back and forth is whether they liked it or not, and they always do, but you don't hear a lot about the emotional part, and you know, and again, that might have been like maybe 5 years ago, and two things happened. One, I got more comfortable being vulnerable with them and indulging in emotions. And the more myself and our team did, the more they were able to open up. But I think that's also reflective of time. You know, 10, 15 years ago, it wasn't necessarily acceptable to do, you know, to talk emotions. But that touched me. And then 2 years ago, we had one of the girls that works as a recovery specialist who had overdosed. She came in and told her story, and the guy that saved her life was there. So that was powerful.
It is. You're telling me, and I feel that right now.
Yeah. So what we started to do, and again, we haven't been able to do it this year, is we added that story. So I have a scene, whether it's an enactment or a play. The first one I did was I had a cop that helped me out a lot, and I just talked to him, thanked him for everything he did for me, and again, you know, there was some tears in the audience with that. So what we're going to do in the future is try to find an officer and somebody who overdosed that saved, and have a conversation about, you know, what's different in their life. More of an encounter than a sociodrama.
I see.
You know, and again, just to define the two terms. So an encounter would be real people talking. The sociodrama would be people playing a role and doing it. And it depends on the heat, because that encounter is pretty touching. I mean, I'm talking about a scene that happened a couple years ago. I get choked up.
So we started to talk about what crisis is, but now I understand like how many applications this training, just with a like little bit, you know, like application for specific field, but how many crises it can handle.
How many opportunities people have for an intervention, and the history of this is unbelievable, because there's this forensic mapping that the federal government came up with about how many people that have been incarcerated because of an addiction or mental illness, and it was an attempt to train everybody, and the police are the only ones that really follow through on that. As a team from the police side and as a team from the community, that continues to come together twice a year, every year. Whereas when we try to train others, very few people show up.
I see. Could you please tell more? You mentioned a lot what you do. Could you please, just with the focus on what you are doing, just tell like briefly about your practice, a little bit more, what you would like people to know about you, what you do?
I'm 26 years in the field of behavioral health. I learned my trade through addiction and added the tools. Psychodrama has just it has been a personal growth and a professional growth both. And like the story I tell about finding psychodrama involved in the history of crisis intervention training, all the people that I trained under, studied, and look forward to implementing their practices all had a foundation in psychodrama. So when I was in grad school, I had all this information, and when I found psychodrama, I'm like, oh, all these people studied under that. So I also have moved into using EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing. So in any given session, when in my private practice, I'll start the session with resourcing people. What are their strengths? What are their positive characteristics? And what are their available resources? And I'll either, go into their traumatic pain if that's what comes up. I'll continue reinforcing their resources, or I'll take it into a role play through psychodramatic means. And, I'm so impressed. If you Google psychodrama warm-up, thousands, like 120,000 warm-ups will come up. It's unbelievable how much information's out there. Now, some of them you need some study or you got a plan, but you could go in, like I used to do it. Like in 10 minutes, I would come up with something I could implement immediately. The thing I love about psychodrama is you kind of get out of the way, and I love it when a patient goes, I know what you're doing, and I have no idea where we're going, but then all of a sudden, the secrets come out. I got one experience that I love to tell. So I was filling in, I was a manager, I was filling in on an addiction group. There was like 12 people in the group. And I said, so introduce yourself as somebody else, right? So I gave the example. I introduced myself as my daughter. My dad's my best friend and all this stuff, right? And so people went around. About the fifth person in, she said, the woman, she says, I'm her husband. And I got to tell you, she's coming into this group every day lying. She's getting high at home. She's looking for somebody to talk to. And I'm like, I don't know these people. And I'm like, is she really revealing everything? And so I stopped. I said, what's going on? She said, I've been dying for somebody to ask me. So it was a good way for her to get honest with the group and tell them that she had been getting high the whole time. And she was able to do it by introducing herself as her husband and her husband's frustration with all this, watching it go on. So it was pretty cool. But as far as my work and my practice, I'm really open to saying yes. So I got this little kid just loves to get involved in things, and then I find myself in a training in front of 35 officers, scared to death, and I trust the practice. So I have a private practice. I work in an agency. I've moved from clinical director to marketing and professional growth. So I love to train people. I love to do things in the community. I'll step up anywhere and anywhere anybody will invite me. I tell you, in the beginning, before I started trainings, I would show up at trainings with CDs, with PowerPoint, ready to go. So when the trainer wasn't there, I go, I got something. And then I did the same thing with psychodrama. Like, you know, people struggle with the AV equipment, and it doesn't always work, and they're up there and they're freaking out because they got an audience. And I said, you know, I can do a psychodrama thing. And I always do the thing I started talking about earlier, where usually it's hospital. So I'll have somebody play a hospital worker or a nurse who's using drugs, and we do the role play with the drugs having a say. And then the one thing, and I want to say, we talked about it last week, what nobody ever thinks about is you have the person, you have alcohol, and we have somebody play both in these sociodramatic things.
Yeah.
But I always pull the addict in, because the addict is a different entity. And my understanding of it is, the stronger the addict, the more reinforced the trauma is. And the addiction, like according to some of the 12-step literature, it's based in fear, resentment, self-centeredness, delusion, dishonesty. And those things are trauma responses, and they become an entity. And I heard, like, when they were doing the DSM-3, they were talking about making addiction a personality disorder. And if you think about it, people, when they lose control, there's a personality that comes up. So that when you get somebody in a rehab and you separate them from the alcohol, now you got to work on separating them from the addiction and understanding what that part is. And when you see it in action in a sociodrama, it brings on a different experience.
Right. Yes, with separate parts. Yes, like this is the mental illness or addiction, and this is the individual. Yeah, that's amazing. Could you please say your message to the people who are watching right now and the people who work with the crisis?
Okay. So there's an expectation when you work in the field and you're a first responder, whether you're a police officer, you're a counselor, you're an EMT, that, you know, we're above this and that we have the tools and the internal fortitude to get past these things. We're human beings. We're vulnerable. We all are susceptible to crisis, and they happen. They happen on our job. They happen in our family. They happen in our life. We're human beings. We're breakable. The message I have is accept that, understand that. Know that when it happens, you have somebody to go to. Reinforce that resourcing. Have a contact. Get vulnerable with your coworker to the point where you can trust them. And then if you can't, find somebody else. But ever since I got in the field, I have done this, and I recommend other people do. I have a business mentor that I go to that knows what they're talking about. I got an emotional person that I can go to, and I can say anything that's going on, and I don't have to worry about it, you know, being out. And I have lost people's trust by doing that. And then when it gets bad, I seek therapy. It amazes me. By the way, I want to take the time to talk about some of your other videos. I was watching some of the other ones, and the one I'm thinking of is Rebecca Walters talks about it's really unethical for a counselor to be in the field that hasn't done their own work, and so many do. And you know, as a counselor, I like to get paid for what I do. I value what I do, and I need to value other people's ability to do that for and with me. And there is, and you can Google this, there's a RAP plan. That's a wellness recovery plan. And in it, it says if you have a psychotic disorder, there's going to be times where you won't trust anybody. Who is the person when you're hearing voices and when you're struggling and everything's going bad in your life, that you trust that person above and beyond, and you make a contract and commitment? I think we all need to do that. You know, we're human beings, and you know, like the more vulnerable we get about this stuff, the more human the world seems, the more comfortable the world is, because we're not above and beyond crisis. We're not above and beyond having all the answers. We need help from each other. I quote Tion Dayton, this codependency has gotten a bad rap. We're human beings. We're born codependent. When a human being is born, they need nurturing. Some animals get up and walk away and they're fine. Human beings aren't. We are born to be codependent. It gets a bad rap when it goes, the wrong way. But we need each other.
Yeah, that's beautiful message. Well, thank you. Yeah. Could you please say some words to the people who are right now in the crisis?
People ask for help. Ask for help and continue to ask for help. Understand you're not alone. I think what crisis does is it isolates you. It makes you feel alone, and you get overwhelmed. I've had close experiences with people and lost people to suicide, and in the suicide they were alone. When suicide looks right, nothing else in the world does, and people were brokenhearted. Over and over again, I read in the books people get into rehab, how much people care about them, and the person's dead within a week of leaving treatment, but people love them, and we need to know that we are needed and cherished and loved. I think the best example I can give of that is my own. 29 years ago, I was homeless, helpless, hopeless. I didn't think I had anything to offer the world. My faith wouldn't allow me to suicide, but I was trying to do that by my addiction. And, here I am 30 years later, helping a lot of people and bringing God's gifts into the world. And that's my recovery message. Like, recovery is finding those gifts God gave you or your Creator gave you and put them into action in the world. Because recovery is not about us, it's about what we can do in the world. But my message to people that are suffering, you're not alone. That it makes other people feel good to help another human being. That's our codependent nature.
Wow. Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing your personal story. And thank you, because it is a gift for me to do your interview.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and I really appreciate the work you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
I've been doing these interviews on Psychodrama project for 2 years, and I realized that there is a big field not covered of online education in action explorations, and specifically in psychodrama. So I've been thinking about this, and I started to work on that almost a year ago. And now I'm coming up with a project. In December, first 5 programs should be on website actionexplorations.education. International trainers on different languages would be introduced on this portal. All programs are pre-recorded. All programs have the part with lectures, the part with case, and the part with evaluation. So you can get certificate at the end, and you can use your hours for your continuum education, for certification with your boards. If the programs will be in English, I'm talking right now to translate them to Russian, Korean, Spanish, and Portuguese. International trainers would be presented there. At this moment, I mostly work with American trainers, but later I am looking forward to work with international trainers. Guys, I'm looking forward to hear your feedback, and I'm looking forward for co-creation with students and with trainers, and just make psychodrama more available online. I also looking forward for the programs which would be not to for psychodramatists or people who are using action exploration methods in their work, but for just regular people, how to use psychodrama in their life, how to improve the life quality with action explorations.